Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Arts as a Student Right, 3 Simple Steps to Make Schools More Creative. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Adelaide Kuhn, and I'm Program Director at Create California. And this program is brought to you by Create California, Arts for LA, California State PTA, and the Arts Ed Alliance of the Bay Area. We would now like to take a moment to acknowledge the land of Indigenous people, past and present, whose land we currently stand on. So my colleague Cordelia will place in the chat 2 documents, one in English, one in Spanish, that explain why we take time to acknowledge Indigenous land. And so if you're not familiar with this practice, please do take time to review those documents to learn about how and why we acknowledge Indigenous lands. These are documents we will also send out with the follow-up email, but please follow the instructions on this slide, either via text message or using the native-land.ca link to find the names of the tribes whose land you occupy in this moment and share your acknowledgement of them in the chat. So let's all take one moment to do that quickly.
Oh, you did? Oh, he ate it?
You was ready to eat some more. I'm fried. Nobody ate.
Thanks, everyone. It's fine if those trickle in. So next, thank you, Alexia. We want to share a list of meeting agreements that the Create California team created in collaboration with the local organizers that we work with. And we use these meeting agreements to kick off our regular meetings. And the goal of these agreements are just really to make sure that everyone feels safe enough to contribute, comfortable enough to make mistakes, and valued enough to speak up if something is not right. So you can take a look, assume positive intent while also checking for impact, know when to step up or step back, challenge the idea, not the person, show up with authenticity, and be generous with praise. So thanks, everyone. Please do try to take these agreements to heart as we interact with each other in the next hour. And next, we'll briefly go over the meeting agenda. Great, so we've just done our welcome and land acknowledgement, and we have 3 actions that we're going to go through tonight: a 1-minute action, a 10-minute action, and a 1-hour action. And then by 6:30, we're going to transition to a Q&A with our panelists. So we have a very robust list of questions that you have all submitted to us with your registration, and we will try to get through as many of those as we can in a discussion with our really incredible group of panelists. So fantastic. All right. Well, it is now, well, let's just make sure everyone's sorted with the interpretation one more time. Yeah, so Cordelia, if you wouldn't mind dropping those instructions, I just want to make sure everybody is accessing the translation if they need it. Wonderful. All right, so it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker, Arlene Kampa. Arlene is a poet, an artist, a community organizer interested in building communities centered in joy, justice, and empathy. Arlene is a fierce advocate for the arts. Arlene works to ensure that all K-12 students across California are receiving an equitable and complete arts education. So thank you so much, Arlene, for being here. It's just a personal pleasure of mine to have gotten to know you over the last several years. So really pleased that you're here with us. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for everybody who is here today and is advocating for the arts. So like Adelaide said, my name is Arlene, And art has always been something that has been a huge part of my life. As you heard, I am an artist and a poet. And, I grew up in a low income household. So the arts were a way for me to access all of this new knowledge and material. My mom would drive us around to every library so we could get free arts lessons. And in elementary school, we only had art maybe once a month if we were lucky. So I used to beg my teachers to be able to go to the other classes that were having arts classes in the following weeks. But once I went to high school, I was super lucky and fortunate to attend the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts, which is known as LCAP, where I got to major in visual arts and came out with a specialization in textile art and printmaking. So all of these big things, I got to study studio art for maybe 4 hours every day. And I was just having so much fun being exhibited and learning all of these new techniques and having peers who were also interested in the same things that I was. And then I would come back home and kind of tell my family about what I was doing and my friends in my community. And they were kind of like, and what is that? There were things that I thought were common knowledge for everyone, like oil paint and turpentine, that my community was not receiving. So I always knew that I straddled this divide between having all of this access and being super privileged, and then also coming back to a community that was not receiving the same resources that I was. For me, art was always a way to navigate my identity and express myself and really understand my positionality in the world. So I decided that it was something that I wanted to take on to share all of this knowledge that I have. So a bunch of these, all of the pictures on this slide are from different classes that I have taught, where different students have produced things that were either culturally competent or, expressing themselves and talking about their rights to art, or just viewing the world around them and doing some figure drawing. So we know the data, and it's disheartening, and that is why we're all here. We know that students of color, English as second language learners, and special needs students have the least access to arts education. And we know that there is a need for a change. So I started teaching at different museums and community centers and schools. And most recently, I founded a nonprofit for students to have access to 1 hour free virtual art classes. And so it was so beautiful to see all of these people coming out and doing their lessons, and there were siblings together or cousins on screen, or even whole families kind of pushing their couch in front of the Zoom screen so they could all watch the dance lessons or, participate in these things together. And so there was a real building of community. But again, we saw like a real need and love for arts. So one of my favorite stories to tell is that we did a workshop about the census with the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And we asked students, what does your community look like when everyone counts? And if you had $100 extra, what would you spend it on? And we heard things from like, everybody would get a McDonald's cheeseburger and we would all sit in the street at one big table and eat them. Or we would make a treehouse with only cats and kids. Mind you, we were teaching elementary schoolers, so these were very radical mutual aid ideas, but it made my heart sing that they were able to kind of conceptualize their own versions of these worlds where everybody matters. So I think it's important to recognize that when we give students arts education, we're not only giving them skills and tools to create and express themselves, but we're expanding their capacity to dream, to have fun, to work through their feelings, and to think about things like McDonald's cheeseburgers for everyone. So I like to think about arts education as kind of a community mutual aid. So it's a wealth of knowledge that each student has and can draw from to share with their community. So the same way that I was coming back home and sharing things with my family are the same way that students are doing across communities. And we almost have a butterfly effect when one student brings something back to their families and then shares it with their friends, and then their friends share it, and so on and so forth. And that is why we need arts education. And arts education advocates are so essential for this fight. Even if you can only spare 10 minutes, an hour, even a week, there are so many things that you can do to help this cause propel it forward. Arts education truly makes an impact for years to come, and that's speaking from personal experience. So thank you all for being here, and I hope that you can keep putting your time towards pushing forward arts education and arts education access.
Thank you so much, Arlene. Thank you for being here. All right, over to you, over to my colleague Alexia, who will introduce herself and take us right into our 1-minute action.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alexia Mathen. I am the Arts Now Program Manager at Create California. And I want to say thank you so much, Arlene, for those beautiful words and inspiring us today. I'm going to go over the 1-minute action. So we have a tool called Who Are My School Leaders? You simply can go to createcalifornia.org and you can go to the Speak Up tab. And then you'll see highlighted in blue, you can click Contact Leaders, and this tool will pop up. So from there, you simply put your home address or where you reside in the box that says Enter Your Address. Then you'll have a drop-down menu appear and you'll choose your district. And from there, you'll click Search. So after you click search, another window will appear with a pre-generated letter, and that will open up. From there, you will fill out the information. It's very, very brief, and you'll click submit. So this letter will go straight to your school leaders, and it pretty much says that you are advocating for the arts education in your district. And that's a really simple, easy 1-minute action. The link to that will be dropped in the chat, and feel free to explore that on your own time. And with that, I will pass it back over to Adelaide for the 10-minute action.
Thanks, Alexia. Great. So I just want to start by saying that there are many, many ways for parents and students to get involved in the school funding process. And for an overview of the various points of entry, I'm going to share, we'll share in the chat a document created by the organization Public Advocates. It's an excellent resource. We have it in English and Spanish. And that is a great way to see the huge array of ways to get involved. Tonight, we're going to focus on surveys that are sent to parents during the budget drafting process. So these surveys are typically sent via email, and some of the surveys have questions that are specific to the arts education, and others don't. It just depends on your district and who's creating this survey. But every single one that I have ever seen has an open comment space, usually at the very end of the survey. And this is a place where you can express your desire to have the arts included in your district's budget. And I think there's a lot of different ways to sort of articulate that, but I want to make sure that everybody kind of leaves today sort of equipped with some idea of what they might say in their survey. So I want to take, we have a Jamboard, and I would love to have everybody jump on to that Jamboard, because filling out this survey is, sorry, just want to make sure everybody's muted as they're coming in. So we know that students and schools thrive when parents are engaged in their children's education, and studies have shown again and again that teachers and principals are more likely to experience high morale, test scores increase, and school programs are stronger when there is parent engagement. And I'm very happy to share that the stakeholder and community engagement is a cornerstone of the local control funding formula. So like I said, there's many ways to engage. The fundamental premise of the local control funding formula is that districts receive funds from the state and they have much more flexibility about how to spend it. But with that flexibility, it's accompanied by an increased effort to seek and incorporate feedback from the community, which broadly, includes parents, students, and other stakeholders as they develop plans to use the money from the state. So let's follow this Jamboard link that, let's see, Cordelia, would you mind putting that in again, Cordelia? Oh, there it is. Thank you so much. So if you follow that link, if you're not familiar with how to use Jamboard, click the link. You'll see sort of like a whiteboard appear, and there will be a little icon, like a square icon on the left of your screen. You click that and you can type in it. Oh, thank you. You can type in it and create a little sticky. So let's all just take a moment. Imagine you've received your parent survey in your email inbox, and you have your opportunity in this open comment space to write a message to your district about why the arts are important and should be considered and included in the district's budget. So there's a couple of slides. Everybody hop on there, and we'll just give you a couple minutes to get some ideas down on paper. I want to read some of these out because they're really great. So we have: the arts are important for my child's mental health. Data shows a relevant and consistent arts education leads to more success in any career students choose to pursue. Let's see. Arts are the answer to the challenges our schools and students are facing now. They are the best way to teach social emotional learning and allow our students to heal. My kid will want to come to school if there is an arts program. So these are fantastic answers. And my hope is that when you receive your LCAP survey, that you can hopefully refer back to this Jamboard document, and maybe you piece a couple of these sticky notes together and create a really high impact comment on that survey that your district will receive and is legally obligated to consider. It's part of when the local control funding formula was created, a key part of that. So if you have 10 minutes to advocate for your child's education or your own education, if you're a student joining us, please consider using the parent survey to include your thoughts. Because again, like I said, these surveys are a very key component of parent, family, community engagement efforts. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm now going to send it over to my esteemed colleague, Cordelia, who's been giving you the links along the way. And Cordelia will please introduce yourself and walk us through the 1 hour action.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you all this evening. My name is Cordelia, and I'm Director of Organizing at Arts for LA. And I am going to do my best in the next 7 minutes to run through making public comment, if you have an hour to spare, one of the best ways you can have impact in your district on behalf of the movement for equitable arts education. Public comment, this just means speaking at a meeting in public, right? So speaking at your school district, the meeting of the leaders of your school district, sometimes called school board, sometimes called your Board of Education, depends on the district. But all it means is getting up in front of them, sometimes digitally, sometimes in real life, and telling your story, making your voice heard. So really quickly, top level, again, these slides are going to be available to everyone. So I'm not going to get into the details super in depth of each bullet point, but just want to go through an overview. Before the meeting, honestly, I can sometimes find this to be the most challenging moment of making a public comment, is figuring out how and when to make a public comment. You're going to go to your board's website and you're going to find the next board meeting, and there will be instructions for how you are able to make your voice heard. It might be online, it might be remote, it might be in person. You also just want to make sure you're coordinating with anyone else who hopefully is showing up to speak out on the arts as well. Make sure you're coordinating messaging. And then you just want to sort of practice before you get up there, because nerves can kick in, right? So sort of, common sense prep. Again, I think the hardest part can be just finding that meeting, finding out when it is and how you can attend digitally or in person. So that's before the meeting, prep. So next up, this is the part that I, when I'm working with advocates and leaders in ed space, that can intimidate folks. Okay, I figured out when I'm supposed to show up. I figured out the link I need. I have those details. What do I actually say, right? It can be overwhelming. And I think I find when I'm making public comment, I can sometimes feel like I have to be an expert in education policy and in the LCAP process. And I just assure you that is absolutely not the case. The most important part of making an effective public comment is really being authentic to yourself, your experience, your story, and telling your story clearly. And I offer this as a way to do that. If it feels like an overwhelming prospect, answer 5 simple questions. Who are you? Right? Who are you? What's your role in the district? Are you a student? Are you a parent? Are you an artist? Are you an advocate? Who are you? The second question to answer is, what do you want the school board to do? What do you want your elected leaders to do? This can also be thought of as the ask. What is your ask? This is a great place to link back to the LCAP priorities or other strategic priority docs. This is where you really want to make sure you're coordinated with any other advocates showing up to the meeting to speak out on arts education. More funding, don't cut funding, longer term strategic plan for the arts. It could be any number of things, but want to make sure you have a really clear and actionable ask, because your story and your public comment is going to be so moving and so so moving and so inspiring that you want to make sure that the leaders you're calling upon to take action have a very specific action that they can take, right? It's a really key part of building a strong public comment. The next question, right after you say, this is who I am and this is what I want, the next part is why. Why do you care, right? And this is really should be the majority of your public comment. You want to tell your story, you want to be specific, and you just need to be authentic to your experience. Why do you care about arts ed? Why is it a meaningful issue to you? And I think we saw a great example of that when Arlene spoke earlier this evening. The next question that's really important is, why should everyone else care? I think of this as the zoom out moment, right? So you start with your story, and then you're thinking about how and why this should be the community's story, right? Why should everyone else care? It's a great place for a data point if you are into such a thing. If you have a good, and Create California has a ton of great data on the importance of arts education. It's a great place to, again, paint the picture of how this impacts everyone, not just you. So last but not least is, why is this important now? So you've made this incredibly moving argument for the importance of arts education in your life, in the life of your community. And now it's time to say, don't kick the can down the road. We really need this now, to express urgency, right? And to link back to your ask, to make sure that you're leaving those leaders with that all-important action that they can take. All right. So that's, again, demystifying the public comment. After the meeting, right? During and after the meeting, some tips on that. Make sure you listen to what's coming before so that you don't repeat anything word for word. You want to make sure that you're speaking conversationally and from the heart, right? If you can not speak from a piece of paper, that's great. But if you need to read, that's also okay. As much as is possible, you want to make eye contact with the board members. Sometimes the board members are not allowed to respond, right? So just know that if you are making eye contact and you're telling your story really passionately and you don't get a response, know that in some cases, the school board members are not actually allowed to respond to your public comments. So just a heads up on that one. And then last but not least, you always want to send a follow-up email if possible, summarizing your ask. Again, what is the action you want folks to take, as well as a few key, maybe the data point you cited, and just a reminder, a quick sort of reminder of who you are and why this issue is important to you. And again, you know, we live in a world where your school board meetings may be virtual one month and in person the next month, and then back to virtual the next month. So it's just really important to, maybe you gave public comment a couple of years ago and you feel like you know the process, you know the site you're supposed to show up to, and the time it may have changed given obviously the public health context and the pandemic. So just make sure you check out your school district's website, you see what the process is right now. Again, it's ever changing, and check with the district website regarding any rules around public comment. You may be asked to submit a written public comment in advance, right? So you could be all geared up to give this public comment live and in person, then go to the website and find you needed to actually submit it in advance, or send an email to someone signing up for a public comment in advance. Again, why it's just really important. And there's no one size fits all. Every school district does it a teeny bit differently. So just important to make sure you get to the website and really check out all those details ahead of time. And then last but not least, this is one of my favorite prep pieces, is get one of the Create California's incredible Zoom backgrounds. You can see it being modeled by the incredible Adelaide right now. There are so many options, and they're all really beautiful and exciting, and just serve as a great, colorful, impactful background for making virtual public comment. Oh my gosh, and I'm only like 30 seconds to a minute over. I think that's it.
Thanks, Cordelia. We'll make sure that everyone gets a link to those. They're on the website, but we'll make sure you get links to the Zoom backgrounds as well. Wonderful. Well, now is our moment to transition over to our panel. So let's kick it off by having everyone introduce themselves. You met Arlene, but Arlene, can you just quickly say hi again? And then we'll just go down the list, and then I'll send it over to you, Aditi.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Arlene Kampa.
Hello, my name is Madeline Spencer.
And Madeline, you can tell us a little bit, just, you know, a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
My name is Madeline Spencer, and I actually work in the city of Santa Ana. I'm working with the Santa Ana Unified School District and their amazing visual and performing arts coordinator, administrator there. And we have worked to bridge the business district and the school district to work together on some amazing programming, which just a little plug, we have a beautiful festival coming up called Boca de Oro, which brings together students from across the district who are going to be performing in visual and performing arts.
Hi, I'm Vinita Verma. I am from Fremont. I am an advocate. I am a huge, biggest fan of art, because art has given me so much in my life. There is nothing that could have done more for me than art. And I think the art has not only given me a life, it has also given my kids a motivation to look forward to their future. So I don't know whether you got an opportunity to read it about me or not, but I've tried to encourage our Unified to take more into their plate in the sense of art, and thankfully our board was pretty. They were leaning towards art from the very beginning, but there was something going on, and we were going to lose a theater program for two of the schools, a junior high and high school. It was a very passionate thing for me to fight for. Along with my daughter, we fought, and that's just one of the things that I believe in. I strongly believe in giving voice to students. I think students are the best advocates that you can find. If the students are into art, if they can advocate for art, the board members love to hear more from the students than parents. So that's something about me. And I think we have school board member now. So
Hello, I'm Summer McBride. I am a parent advocate. I have 5 children in Culver City schools from 2nd grade to my oldest, who's a senior this year. I also serve on the Culver City School Board. I've been a board member since 2017. And I was excited to find out that this is also co-sponsored by the PTA because I am a lifelong card-carrying member of the PTA, and I appreciate more than the book fairs and fundraisers, the advocacy, the fierce advocacy of the PTA as it relates to students' rights and access. So I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Aditi. I am an arts education activism intern at Create California, and I'm also a senior at Northwood High School, which is located in Irvine. I have a special passion for the arts, specifically vocal music, dance, drama, and film, and I'm so excited to be moderating the question and answer portion of this meeting. So our first question comes from, these questions have been pre-submitted, and our first question says, my school board members are dealing with so many pressing issues and crises all the time. How do I break through all the noise and get them to care about the arts?
So I'm going to jump in and take that first question. I think it's a really great question. And the first step is to learn about your local school boards and what their greatest challenges are, not just right now because of COVID, but even pre-COVID. And for the last 22 months, it's been pretty obvious that COVID and COVID-related issues are at the top of that list. There are themes that we've heard endlessly on repeat over the last couple of years about mitigating the spread, remote learning, student and staff mental health, the digital divide. However, a lot of those challenges were faced pre-COVID. Not much of that is new. A lot of it was compounded by COVID. And because of the pandemic and this move to remote learning, and now we're sort of in limbo. A lot of school boards are dealing with COVID-related issues, but also being pressed to get back to the business at hand. And unfortunately, because of the conflicting information that we receive sometimes from the state or from the federal government, I like to think of our relationship with COVID as like if it was a social media post, it's complicated. Like, I don't know if we're on, if we're off. It's a complicated relationship. And so that's also something that school boards are challenged with. So in order to get through that noise, the arts is an answer, and we have to help school boards understand that many of the things that we're dealing with, including the chronic absenteeism, the social emotional learning, the access to enrichment, the school climate, the school culture. We're seeing a lot more behavioral issues as students are returning to classrooms, because many of our students, you think of our kindergartners, the ones who were kindergartners in 2020, in March 2020, are returning to school this year as 2nd graders. They missed an entire 1st grade year where a lot of that foundation about social interaction was built or would have been built. And so they're coming in not really knowing how to navigate the school climate, and they're showing their emotions, they're acting out. And it's normal when a child doesn't have the tools to articulate their feelings, but art is critical to that. Art can be the solution. So once you identify your school district's biggest concerns, then you can begin to help your board members and even some of your district administrators understand how the arts can be a significant part of the solution. They may actually need to see the data that shows how access to a robust arts program can increase student attendance, improve behavior, It allows students to feel more connected to their peers because they find their people, whether it's like-minded peers who are interested in music or ceramics or dance. It's just an incredible way to increase that student engagement. And someone touched on this also. Amplify your students' voices. We have student board members, and we actually listen to them whenever we have something that we have to decide on, a policy or a resolution. We actually give our student board members preferential vote because we want to hear their opinion on issues, anything that's not related to student discipline or personnel matters. Our student board members, our student councils, our ASB, they have constant access to school board members as well as our superintendent, and they are critical because this is about their learning. And the arts can also be an incredible way to engage students in other subjects. Right now, we are building our ethnic studies program, and I'd say we loosely, we have an incredible team of teachers and educators in our district that are building our ethnic studies program, and they've included an arts and culture section for the high school, which is integrating arts and ethnic studies, and it's being taught by a single subject credentialed art teacher, which is phenomenal. So those are some of the ways that you can get your school board members to see the need for arts, because it's not, the arts are not an add-on, it's the plate that so much of this can be built on. And once you have that foundation, they'll start to see improvements in so many other areas in the district.
Thank you so much, Summer. Our next question asks, how can I get members of my community to care about the arts in schools?
Okay, I'll take that question. So one of the ways that I think of, and first is having a knowledge of your community. The community as a whole, for instance, in the city I live in, is made up of, it's almost 80% Latino. And when you talk about art in a cultural community, you first have to look at the culture of the community, where art is embedded in every aspect, from the clothing to the dress to the culinary choices that are made. And when you look at that, you also can recognize that we need to bring arts back into community. And one of the things in my positionality, which is in the downtown district of the city, is that my board really said to me, we don't see our children, we don't see our youth anymore. And where I come from, we have a municipal band, for example, that comes down the streets, and we know who our children in the arts are. So one of the first engagements was to begin bringing the youth back out to showcase what they're doing. And there's so many silos in community between education and the community at large, that oftentimes the support that we want from community will only come by bringing those two things together again, so that community can see and enjoy and be a participant in the life of the youth in our schools through this ability to be engaged in artistic practice and get to witness artistic practice from our youth. So that is one of the things that I think is a really important part of bringing community to begin advocating for what they want. And one of the things that our school district did ask for in that first LCAP, which in about 2014, the community had a very strong voice. And I think that they asked for the school district to bring back arts. And by that ask, we were able to bring in someone to coordinate all 60 of the schools. And that was through a visual and performing arts administrator. And first it was a coordinator. So they were able to pay for that because the voice of the community asked for it. And when you take an individual that is put at the center of all these schools and can bring together all the different aspects of art and begin to work really hard through strategic planning in the school district to make sure that the arts are being equitable across the district, and that arts are in every area of education, I think that that's a really powerful position and an important position, and it can help to also make the bridge, because if there's no one there, then a community has, again, no ability to have access to what's happening within the school district, because there's nobody organizing that on the inside. So those are two of the most important things that I think just from the start is breaking down silos and making sure there's somebody organizing the arts within your school so that the community can have access and begin to advocate for all of the students within.
Thank you, Madeline. I am a worried parent about my child's transition back into the in-person learning after being remote and losing time interacting with friends. I think more theater classes and dance classes will help my child feel more comfortable with her peers. How do I make this happen?
Take that question, Aditi. Thank you so much. That's a great thought. Yes, absolutely. Theater, dance, and other forms of art can certainly reduce stress and uncertainty of going back to school, while helping students bond with each other and create caring friend groups. If you are lucky to have theater and dance classes at your school, certainly go for it. They can be great avenue. Art can be really healing, especially during these times of collective trauma, with children when children may be having difficulty finding ways to express themselves. You can also work with teachers and administrators to form clubs at schools. Students can take up various responsibilities and parts. Someone can write a play, someone can design backdrops, costumes, and so on. So you can take so at that point you can actually create a small space for the students to be creative and do improv too, stand-ups, and maybe dress designing too. And that's another form of art. This will not only bring children from various interest areas together, but also give them a sense of belonging and pride of ownership and achievement. You can also start up Odyssey of Mind team. It is a great organization to promote various such interests and encourage students of similar grade level to explore their own interest areas. You can go to school board meetings, as I mentioned earlier. Remind them about California Ed Code, remind them that art is student right and that you would like the district to provide an equitable art program at your school and create funds of such programs. Just be assertive. Don't give up. You will have to probably go and speak up multiple times, but don't give up. California State PTA is your best ally. California State PTA has a long history of art support. We have many resolutions that you can cite to your school board while advocating for art programs, and you can really use the PTA support at your unit also. Please feel free to explore our site. You can approach your school PTA to invite various community-based organizations that can offer free or concession price programs. In the past, I had been successful in inviting Toastmaster International and high school students to come and teach our children about public speaking, debate, Sharpie art. Many times they come and teach playwriting and role playing. PTAs are usually very helpful in advocating for programs that might be interesting to many children. So not only that, I mean, there are so many avenues that you can take. There is no right or wrong avenue. There are, as I said, there are multiple resources available. You just have to go looking for it probably. And then, actually, that brings me to a point where I was, when Arlene was talking about the previous question, was it Arlene? I think it was Arlene, about how you can encourage the community to think about art. I have used this. Maybe you can use it. Just a tip. You can tell them, see, I don't have my phone yet. This is a TV remote, and you see there are so few buttons. This is piece of art. there is no way it could have been done without some artist being there to design this. So look at the TV, look at your smartphone. Art is everywhere. All you have to do is just see it and think that it was designed by an artist. If you have iPhone, and Apple was the first one to talk about coming up with minimum number of buttons to do an operation. That is a beautiful piece of art. There are in California, I know everybody is going into technology and everybody's thinking about technology. Why don't we use it to in our benefit and say, hey, you know what? Technology is there because of art. So just something to think about. But thank you so much, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Vinita. Our next question asks, the proposed CA budget allocates funds for art programs. What entity can we connect with to receive these funds? So that's correct. The governor's proposed budget does have a portion for arts education funding for after-school programs. If the funding makes it into the final budget, the funds will be distributed by the California Department of Education and will go to the schools directly. Rather than having to connect with another organization, these schools will receive the funds from the Department of Education to use. So our next question asks, in a world where STEM is given priority, how can we advocate for arts programs and show that art has a place in STEM too?
So I'll take this one. And part of it is what we've kind of already been talking about. Art is everywhere. It's in everything we use. It's in the cars we drive, our homes. No one goes to the movie theater and has a favorite movie who hasn't been impacted by art. Like, that is what we have to remind school board members and school district administrators, that every one of us has a connection to art, and we have to make it less abstract, no pun intended, but we have to make it less abstract for our educational leaders so that they understand that everything you do ties back in some way to art, even to the design of, like she was just mentioning, the remote control. So most board members, by and large, are not usually educators by profession. And so it's important to help board members understand how students are impacted when we teach them how they learn best, not teaching them how we teach best. And that's what we've traditionally done. We've taught students how we thought they should learn, as opposed to learning how they learn best and then teaching them in that way. And art can be one way of doing that. Going from STEM to STEAM is important because the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math is critical to the design elements and innovation that we see in everything that we use. So STEM is incomplete because the arts allow us to actualize innovations. It's in the design process that we are able to be artistic and creative. It fosters critical thinking and problem solving and risk taking and reflection and inflection, and it actually uses all of our senses when we integrate art into that science, technology, engineering, and math. And going from STEM to STEAM also allows students to activate parts of their brain. And I'm not getting into that right brain, left brain discussion, because there are some neuroscientists who don't believe it's that cut and dry. But we do know that unless we are being creative, we are not utilizing all the parts of our brain that we can use to be innovative and groundbreaking in the way we problem solve and find solutions that we're faced with all the time. And you have to keep repeating to your boards and district administrators that art is a core subject. It is not even optional. We cannot allow administrators to cut budgets that directly impact the arts, because that's actually against the state requirement for us to treat art as a core subject. So it's important for you to, in your advocating, ask your district and hold them accountable. When was the last time they took inventory of their arts programs, including who has access, how often do those students have access, down to the minutes provided if they have a push-in art program. Also, who's teaching the art class? Is it a single subject credentialed art teacher? arts integration is really important. I've never walked into an elementary classroom where there was not art everywhere, poems, drawings, creative writing, on display. But we know that multi-subject teachers don't always have a strength in art. So it's important for your district to look at their budgets and decide how they can integrate art, which means that the arts align with all of those other core subjects and nothing is lacking. True integration means that they're getting the full social studies content, but they're also getting the full art content. You can't have it lopsided. And not every teacher knows how to do that. And so you can also ask your teachers, your school districts, if they've applied for and have access to TEAL funding, TEAL. It's the Technology Enhanced Arts Learning Project. I think I got all of that right. But it's a way that we can integrate arts using technology and its additional funding. And you can also use your ESSER funding. The COVID funds are actually allowing us to be really creative. And let me tell you something, school districts have money right now. We have not had this much money in a long time because of COVID funds. And you have to show up to every LCAP meeting. You have to show up to your school site council meetings. You have to show up to your school board meetings. You have to listen when they're approving budgets, and you have to ask these questions in a very direct and pointed way. How are we using these funds, or how can we use these funds to enhance the arts in our schools, because we know that the arts have a direct impact on our students' social emotional learning and mental health. And so you just have to show up, and you can't just show up at one meeting and think that they're going to continue to think about that after you're gone. You have to show up to, I often say that a lot of the work of the school board and the district happens between the school board meetings, not always at the school board meetings. By the time you get to a school board meeting, a lot of times, even with the Brown Act, a lot of times board members have made up their mind. So you have to show up at those little community meetings, your ELAC meetings, the district advisory committee meetings for special education, for English learners, your equity committee meetings, if you have them, because arts has to be infused in all of those areas. And it has to include all elements of art, dance, media, music, theater, visual arts. We can't emphasize one over the other. And I'll end this by saying, also tap into your local areas, businesses in your area. Living in California, there's no shortage of industry giants who understand corporate social responsibility. It's not an option anymore. You need to be tapping into those resources, because we have a partnership in Culver City with Sony. They don't give us a ton of money, but they give us a lot of in-kind support. So our film students get to feature their films and showcase their talents at Sony Studios. That has an incredible impact on students. So there are opportunities for lucrative partnerships that your school districts need to look into as well, to make sure that they are holding the community accountable to arts integration and arts inclusion.
Thank you so much to all our panelists for answering our questions. And I think that's all the time we have left today for questions. So I'm going to hand it back to Adelaide.
Thank you so much, Aditi, for your facilitation. We're scratching the surface here. We had a lot more questions come in. So if you really have something pressing, please don't hesitate to email your question to me, and I can direct it to the panelist who can best answer it. I really want to close by thanking everyone for being here, taking the time to be here. Really special thank you to these panelists. You brought so much knowledge, experience, expertise into this discussion tonight. So very, very grateful for your time. And as we're closing out, I just want to again encourage everyone to please consider completing the action that fits your life right now. So if you have 1 minute, if you have 10 minutes, if you have an hour, there's something for you to do and a way for you to participate. I also want to say that, say for example, you really only have 1 minute. You can do the contact your leaders feature on our website. If you can do that, but then take another minute to send it to 10 of your parent friends, that is vastly multiplying your impact, right? So please think about sharing these actions with your various networks, and be on the lookout for a follow-up email from the team. It will include the recording of this session. It will include every single link and more that we've shared. So that is should be a tool that you can think of, like forward that email to anyone who you can think of who cares about their child's education, and making sure that arts education is a part of it. So thank you all so much for being here, and we will be in touch soon. We'll probably get that email out to you early next week. Have a great evening.